A governor with two budgets unveils the first one, the one he says we'll like best. It's contingent on federal health dollars, unlike the one he says we won't like. How to remake the biggest state agency which spends those dollars, and is the race about to remake itself still again? Arkansas Week, next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us for Arkansas Week. Proposals to remake Arkansas government, reconfigure it, and of course, fund it. That's where we'll begin. Jacob Kaufman joins us from KUAR Public Radio in Central Arkansas. Steve Bronner, an independent journalist. Hoyt Purvis from the Political Science and Journalism faculty at the University of Arkansas. Guys, we had, first of all, Mr. Hutchinson, Governor Hutchinson, when he unveiled the skeleton, as it were, Steve, several weeks ago, of what he would be asking the General Assembly to do, primarily to renew Arkansas Works, as it's called now, indicated I've got two budgets. One of them includes the Arkansas Works, formerly known as a private option, and one without. And you'll like the one with it better. That included some highway money too. Anyway, we got the administration's initial proposal this week.
We did, and there's only one budget at the moment. There are numbers that they're preparing in case Arkansas Works does not get through. But right now, he did unveil his budget. It's pretty flat in a lot of ways. Schools get 1% as always in order to keep the state out of court. DHS is the big one. It gets about $112 million more because medical costs are always going up, and that money has to go to start paying for the private option or Arkansas Works, whatever else we want to call it. And there's just other expenses. Everything else is pretty flat. Universities are flat. Everything pretty much is getting what's gotten in the past. The big issue is going to be Arkansas Works, which is Hutchinson's continuation of the private option. We're about to go through a month of arguing about that. That's the program that provides health insurance for people who are up to 138% of the poverty line. And it's a huge issue, and we're about to have a special session starting April 6th, and then the fiscal session starting April 13th, and it's going to be all about that.
Yep.
We just had the legislative task force that looks at Arkansas Works formally endorsed the framework of the governor's plan, at least, which they'd sort of done in smaller steps before, but we're actually going to see, hopefully, what the legislation might look like by the end of this month, heading for that April 6th special session. But as you mentioned, we were promised two budgets from the governor, one with all these cuts that he said would harm education and public safety, very kind of vague threats that these could harm a lot of critical state services if we don't pass Arkansas Works. He did give us some numbers about that. For instance, he said one of the raises for DHS, which is most of the money, about $100 million, $120 million, is for the foster care system, which the state has been studying for a long time now. There just aren't enough beds to meet all the demand there. He said without Arkansas Works, you could bet that foster care money, which he says doesn't even address the entire need, will not be there at all. So that's one thing we know about. And in the past, he talked about his highway budget. He's trying to move some general revenue to help fund highways. He said that wouldn't likely happen either.
So we're looking at a budget which is the only budget we've got right now, and that's contingent on something favorable happening with Arkansas Works or private option or whatever term you choose to apply at this point.
Medicaid expansion, everything else is just basically flatlined.
Yeah.
Not for the first time.
This has been for a while. You know, higher ed, all the state's colleges, universities have been getting the same for about 5 years in a row now. Like I said, schools, they do get 1%. That's to keep the state out of court over the Lakeview case. But you know, Governor Hutchinson cut taxes with the legislature last session. There's no extra money. In fact, typically Arkansas budgets have had a surplus. The last one was a very small surplus, and this budget assumes no surplus. We're going to hit it right on the nose with no money extra or no money lost. So there's not much to play with. That's why Arkansas Works is so important to Governor Hutchinson.
Back to the task force, Jacob. This is a legislative panel with consultants that have been trying to study this thing from every conceivable angle, and they keep coming back with numbers that make the administration's case.
Yeah, they say that by taking Medicaid expansion, which is fundamentally saying we're going to take a whole bunch of extra federal dollars from the Affordable Care Act that the state used to have to pay for some of the Medicaid coverage, now the federal government will pick up a larger share of it, and they say that it'll save, I think, $750 million over 5 years was the last number they gave the task force. And so that is an argument definitely the governor wants to make, that past this we'll have a bigger budget to spend on more things. But at the same time, he's making this kind of complicated argument that we have to make additional savings in traditional Medicaid to help pay for the savings we're getting from regular Medicaid expansion. So that's an argument I think that's confusing a lot of legislators. If Medicaid expansion saves money by itself, why do we need to cut from somewhere else?
Well, and we keep running into this argument too, and it presented itself in with some vigor on the Democratic side this past week, and that's the question of managed care. Yeah, with a high-cost population or constituency in Medicaid.
And this is, the governor says, we can talk about my budget, but if we have all these managed care changes, then we'll have a whole different budget picture. He's trying to generate $800 million or so, I think, over half a decade. It's something the governor, he's pretty strongly said he wants some type of managed care, particularly for high-cost populations, some of them at least in Medicaid. But the committee is totally deadlocked on it. There's two different fundamental competing proposals, and Hutchinson's got a plurality of votes, but not the majority. So it's a big open-ended question going into April.
And what Hutchinson is trying to do is to try to, so far the private option has been free almost to the state. And starting in 2017, the state starts paying a small amount, 5%, and it goes up to 10% by 2020 for the private option. And what the governor's trying to do is to find savings to pay for that 5 to 10%. And as Jacob said, the task force is deadlocked, and it's not based on party lines. In fact, the opponents of the managed care include a whole lot of Republicans.
It's bipartisan, I should.
Yeah, and most of them actually have experience in the medical field in their private lives, and they do not want managed care. They think that it's a way that profit-seeking private companies will use to diminish care, and ultimately they're afraid that they'll end up coming back to the state and demanding more money anyway because it didn't work out right. So it's a very big issue. In many ways, it's actually become more controversial than the private option was.
And since a lot of these budget issues require that 3/4, 75% of each chamber to pass, it makes it a lot more contentious. Particularly mentioned Democrats might actually have a role in some of this. For Arkansas Works, the Medicaid expansion part, almost all but one abstained from voting on it, signaling what? We'll see, but they've made it pretty clear the last week that they expect to start getting something in return for their pretty committed support throughout since 2013.
Well, it's something of a protest vote too. The minority leader, Mr. Ingram, in the Senate was one of three, I think, panel members who said, "Wait a minute, no."
And part of that,
not a vote against, but
and even though that was on Arkansas Works, the expansion of Medicaid was a protest over the managed care vote that is deadlocked. He said he's frustrated that he said a lot of other committee members, I don't know who he's speaking for at least, think the governor has worked behind their backs and has arranged some of these deals with the nursing home industry in particular to work out savings instead of letting the task force do its job and have that legislative independence to find their own solutions.
Do we see a way forward on this, the administration or the opponents? Is there, where's the compromise, or are we just going to have to let the fireworks go off and see how?
I don't know where the compromise
is. Where the smoke
goes. It seems like since there are these different populations we're looking at for managed care, it could be the aged, it could be the disabled, nursing homes, certain industries have different amounts of sway, it seems
mental health, I think, is in there.
Mental health, too. So you could see maybe Hutchinson could carve out a deal with nursing homes, but maybe the legislature would get what they want on a different population.
Or a stopgap measure that just gets us through. Let's see what the next administration is in Washington that maybe will be a little more friendly to what Arkansas would like to do. That would be one way out instead of doing something for years and years. Just get through and let's see who wins the election. That might be a way.
How do you guys read the chemistry anyway right now of the larger General Assembly on the extension, which we'll be considering in that first session?
Talking about Arkansas Works?
Yeah.
It only takes 9 senators. Typically you have legislators that no one expresses extreme support for it on the campaign trail. But when they get into the Capitol and they see the numbers, they tend to move. Again, it takes 9 senators to kill it. It'd be hard to see Arkansas getting totally rid of it. Louisiana said no originally. Now they are changing their minds. But it's also not guaranteed that we'll have what we have at all right now.
And that is one thing that keeps coming up from some of the people who are reluctant. They keep saying, who knows who's going to be president in 2017? If it's Ted Cruz, he might cut Medicaid expansion altogether. Charlotte Douglas expressed some reservation that Arkansas won't be paying 10% in 5 years for Medicaid expansion. But it could be,
Douglas.
Yeah, it could be 20 or 30. So, you know, as long as these Republican members don't believe the numbers coming out of Washington or the program will be there, there's always going to be that doubt in their mind that if I just hold off for a few more months, it could be totally different.
Well, we had a task force report this past week task force chaired by Governor Griffin, Lieutenant Governor Griffin, to assess the Department of Human Services, the big one in state government. And it wasn't what they came back with was not a total dismemberment of the agency, but a good shaking up anyway.
Well, Governor Griffin says that the
reconfigured, maybe that would be.
He says DHS is, and this is not really a big secret, but he's put it. I mean, he did a lot of research and he's got proof that DHS is divided into divisions that don't talk to each other. That it requires a lot of redundancy, a lot of inefficiency, a lot of waste. That if you're an Arkansas client who needs Medicaid services, you're going to one division after another. No one is there to guide you through it, and each division's CFOs report to their own division, not to department's CFO, and so it's just kind of a big mess. And he thinks it needs to be more integrated and a whole different kind of approach. Cindy Gillespie, the new DHS director, testified yesterday in front of the Joint Budget Committee. She indicated that she agreed with what he was saying. So we have got this. She's come in. She's our new DHS director. She's making a lot more money than the past one was. She is thought to be a super duper organizer, super duper manager. So we may see some major changes to DHS in the near future.
Yep. And she promised her own review, I believe, within a short amount of time too. And I guess then we'll really see how much she lines up with Lieutenant Governor Griffin.
Well, I mean, it's a nerve-wracking job, no matter who holds it, no matter what the pay is. It tends to eat up administrators, and heaven's wonder is that the previous director, a dozen years, I think, as DHS director, just to chew up and spit out administrators. Anyway, on to something else, and that is, well, the campaign. We've had now our 300th debate, I think it was.
Well, at least the 12th Republican debate,
okay.
Yeah.
What do we make of it?
Well, it looks like we may be coming down to crunch time on both the Democratic and Republican sides at this point. We have some big primaries coming up next week, particularly in Florida and Ohio, and those will more than likely determine the destiny of two of the Republican candidates, Rubio and Kasich. The debate that occurred last night, everybody has remarked on the fact that it was remarkably civil, certainly compared to what's gone before, where we've had just the slurs and the annex and the wild claims, et cetera, et cetera. But when you get right down to it, Donald Trump's in a pretty good position, and it's going to be hard to dislodge him. It's not impossible if the other two, if Rubio and Kasich do drop out after next week, then it really does become a two-man race. On the Democratic side, it is said, or it could be said, that Sanders has some momentum. He's got money, but Hillary Clinton has the math. And again, when you look at the numbers and you look at what's happening, it's hard to see that Sanders is going to be able to catch up with Hillary in terms of delegates. So there's still a little crack in the door for on both sides, but at this point it's hard to see that hard to believe that it's not going to be Trump versus Clinton.
The civility aspect was kind of interesting to me about the Republican debate, at least. I watched most of it. They were very calm compared to normal. I think a lot of the things they said, a lot of their policies at least, were the same. They didn't announce anything new, didn't have any new opposition to anything, but they just said it a lot more calmly. Also less people on the stage, a little less chaotic. And Donald Trump seemed to be pretty pleased with himself. He even said at one point, and he kind of smiled, and he said, like, I've been pretty civil tonight, as if to say, look at me, Republican establishment, I can be your candidate. But we'll see if he does get the nomination, if he really wants to be that kind of personality.
Yeah, Steve, any thoughts?
Well, there's still a chance for a brokered convention where nobody has a majority of delegates when you get to the Republican National Convention. In that case, it could, anything could break loose. More and more, it's looking like it's Trump. Rubio is losing in Florida pretty badly right now. He may close the gap. If he loses in Florida, he'll drop out of the race. That makes it a three-man race. Kasich is looking pretty good in Ohio. If he wins there, he might stay in for a while. And if he can amass enough delegates, then he might potentially could keep Trump from getting a majority outright. But if Trump has 45, 46, 47%, how do you deny that? This past week also was interesting in that there was rumblings that Michael Bloomberg would run as an independent candidate. Those are out. There's even talk now of Condoleezza Rice, being drafted to run. She's shown no interest in that. So it looks like it's going to be, a typical two-party race, and it's going to be probably Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton.
Well, first of all, the momentum or the trajectory of all the campaigns seem to be kind of set. Certainly Mr. Trump's would seem to be set. He doesn't have nearly as far to go. It goes without saying, he doesn't have to go nearly as far to sew this nomination up as Mr. Cruz or Mr. Rubio did. Basically, I don't want to say that he can just mark time, but close.
Well, he's definitely on the inside track, and he's leading. If you want to look at the horse race aspect of it, he's clearly in front. But there's still some competition there, and something extraordinary could happen. I think the chances and the chances of a brokered convention, I've never thought there was much probability to that, but it's a slim possibility, particularly, for example, if Kasich makes an especially strong showing next week, that might keep him in the game. But really, when you sit down and analyze it on both sides, it's hard to see how the runners-up at this point are going to catch the leaders.
I just want to switch over to the Democratic race if you got a second for that. But it looks good for Hillary Clinton in terms of the delegate numbers, but it's not a very clean or enthusiastic road to the nomination for her.
Turnout has been...
Turnout's been low, and in the key groups she needs to win the general election, the youth vote, they've been going 80% or so for Bernie Sanders in most of these states, even ones that she's lost for a few of them. So if that's a group you want to turn out and motivate, that they're already hard to get out to vote, and they're not on your side to begin with, it's not the most exciting nomination for her, if she does get it.
She really has not found her groove in this whole campaign, except the strong backing that she has in the African American community, and that's carried her certainly in the southern states. And I think she's frustrated, understandably, because you see that she's sort of cleaning out the closet, throwing everything she can find at Bernie Sanders to see if something might really stick, and it hasn't happened so far.
And she hasn't had much luck in open primaries either. That's really been Bernie Sanders. When independents, if they're going to vote for a Democrat, they choose to tend him over Hillary Clinton, which doesn't bode well for her.
I am struck by the wide swings in polling. These are reputable polling organizations, but take Michigan, for example. In one survey, she was ahead on the day before Michigan Democrats voted, or the day before the primary voted. She was ahead by double digits.
It's clearly the Michigan polling is one of the most amazing examples of being completely off the mark. But it's not the only one.
No.
But in the case of Michigan, in all of these cases, I mean, the pollsters, I think, are struggling to find, what to weight, what the value to give to various groups, and how to weigh that into the bigger picture. And it just shows that there's turmoil out there. There's a lot of last-minute changing of minds. To give credit to the pollsters, they've got a very difficult task these days.
We had a speaker at the Clinton School a couple of weeks ago, a pollster, who said that primary polling is very, very difficult. In the general election, it's a Democrat versus a Republican. Most folks have made up their mind long before. Primaries, in the New Hampshire primary, 47% of the voters made up their mind in the last 3 days. Well, how do you poll that? You can't. So it's very difficult. So the one thing is that Trump has led the polls throughout, and that has worked in his favor. I mean, ultimately they've borne that out. And Hillary Clinton, despite her difficulties, is the nominee. Sanders is the candidate that the electorate is wanting to date, but ultimately they'll marry Hillary when it comes down to it. So the polls are imperfect, but they give us an idea. They're a snapshot in time.
Absolutely. Anybody want to add to it? Well, take the case of Mr. Trump before the last primary. Again, these are reputable, seasoned professional organizations. There was at one point a 22-point discrepancy between one poll and another in terms of how Mr. Trump would perform before the last primary. And as we know, it didn't turn out anything like that.
Which one? Which poll?
Oh, well, gosh, I've got...
I mean, which state?
Was that
Michigan?
Michigan?
Yeah.
Michigan, yeah.
But so that poll was taken, one poll was taken before the debate when Trump was talking about his hand size. And the other polls were taken immediately afterwards, and you get that kind of wild swing.
But I think also one thing that may be going on here is I think some people are going when they're actually voting, they're voting for Trump, or they're voting for Sanders as a protest vote to some extent. I think that's definitely out there. There is a lot of unhappiness. Trump says anger. I mean, there is anger out there, and I think we're seeing a lot of protest vote where people are not necessarily identifying themselves as Trump supporters, for example, but when they get in and actually cast their vote, it's a protest vote. By golly, I'm going to just show him I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, even though I don't think he's going to win.
I think actually there are four parties at work here. There's Democrat, Republican, there's angry blue, and there's angry red.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Well, I'm willing to wildly speculate that people who are anti-establishment might tend to vote for Trump, and Sanders are less likely to do a phone survey. It's just something that not very many people. I was at that event with the pollster from New Hampshire at the Clinton School. I think he said for most polls, it's less than 2 or 3% of people ever respond, and it's even harder with people with cell phones. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to reach untraditional voters and groups like that, you might suspect that they're a little less likely to participate in those things.
Yeah, and having shoved a thumb in the establishment's eye, as it were, both parties, but particularly in the GOP, it makes what it would seem to be the idea of rushing, trying to parachute a candidate in there at the last minute. It didn't work very well with Mr. Romney, not as a candidate, but with him urging.
It's hard to see anything like that happening at this point. I mean, Romney made a number of charges against Trump, many of which have some basis, but it didn't really change anything, I don't think. And it's hard to see. Bloomberg decided not to make a run for it, and I think there's some good practical reasons why he did that. But you don't really see anybody out there on the horizon who's suddenly going to emerge as a serious contender.
Yeah, and let's do this too. Remember where we're seated. Where's Arkansas right now? Where do you think, Steve, it would be in November?
Well, it's reliably red, and I don't think the fact that Hillary Clinton was once our First Lady would make a difference. So maybe there are some Republicans who would typically vote Republican but won't vote for Trump. But, I mean, this is a red state, so it would seem to be that would be in that category.
If the voting occurred this week or next week, I think Trump wins in Arkansas. But, we've still got 7 months plus to go before election date. A lot can happen, but that's certainly the way it looks right now.
Jacob.
Arkansas also goes Republican. I will say that we talk a lot about the Republican nomination possibly being up in the air. Maybe someone can unseat Trump. With the Democratic race, it's inevitability, even with Sanders picking up primary wins. Of course, they run their primaries differently, winner take all for Republican contests, but there is that dynamic in the way we talk about it. Yeah. Kasich, who guy hasn't really won anywhere, is maybe.
Public broadcasting in Arkansas lost a very, very good, central figure this past week. Our friend Ben Fry, longtime general manager of KUAR, public radio in central Arkansas, left us. He was only 54, Jacob, but wise beyond his years. You worked with him on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I can say that I've never felt like an employee when I worked with him, which made me feel really great as a person to be around him. He's one of those people that wanted everyone to be very comfortable, He recognized work as part of life, is not something that should consume your whole life necessarily. And he's a rare breed, a guy who came from a small Arkansas town, Wynne, Arkansas. He's been through monumental changes in broadcasting and in radio, and in an era where a lot of news radio, at least, is gone. He really left Central Arkansas with something that's pretty good, pretty strong and vibrant still without him, and I think we're in a good position to keep going forward, but we'll definitely miss him.
Our friend Ben Fry. Thanks to everybody for coming in. Thanks to you, as always, for watching. See you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.